Friend, Shabbat Shalom. Thank you for the privilege of sharing some words of Torah with you this evening. One quality that I admire in an individual is having a backbone, standing firm from one's values and your principles, a commitment to doing what is right even when it is not popular. Ronald Reagan said it well when he shared these words, "Many a man has failed because he had his wishbone where his backbone should have been." That really is what is at stake when you read the Torah this week. It's a story about what it means to stand firm and to have principles. When Moses felt that the people of Israel were ready to end their wandering in the wilderness and to enter the promised land, he sends out an advance team, an expeditionary force. He sends them to scout out the land of Canaan and to report back the facts. What did they see? And so this is what Moses asked them to do. What kind of country it is? Are the people who dwell in it strong or weak, few or many? Is the country in which they dwell good or bad? Are the towns they live in open or fortified? Those are the questions they needed to answer. 12 people are selected, one from each tribe, each respected by their own communities. And here is what happens. After spying out the whole land of Canaan, the group brings back a report. All 12 people agree that the land was wonderful. It was flowing in milk and honey. The Canaanite cities were strong and defended. And the people who lived there were strong. In fact, they referred to him, they looked like giants to them. But unexpectedly, things fall apart. The group becomes divided by what is the interpretation of the report. The Torah says the following: Caleb hushed the people before Moses and said, "Let us by all means go up, and we shall gain possession of it, for we shall surely overcome it." But the men who had gone up with him, the other 10, "We cannot attack that people, for it is stronger than we." Thus they spread defamations among the Israelites about the land that they had scouted, saying, "The country that we traversed and scouted is one that devours its settlers." 10 of them recommend that the people were too weak to move to their future homeland. Since they face certain defeat according to their view, it was best to retreat into the wilderness. Some said, "Let's turn around and go back to Egypt, even if it means becoming slaves again." But there is this minority of 2 people, Caleb and Joshua. They completely reject the majority position. They believed in the divine promise and Moses' leadership. And more importantly, they believed in the potential of their fellow Israelites to rise to great heights of valor if only they would believe in God and believe in themselves. And so what happens? We know the end of the story, unfortunately. At this moment of critical decision making, this 3-week journey to Israel becomes a 40 years of wandering, where the generation that knew Egypt needed to die off, and that was the defined decision and punishment. Now, why did the majority of spies come back with such a negative report? Why were only 2 of them strong enough to resist the majority's erroneous report? The Torah may be alluding to the fact that people, even top leaders, come to incorrect conclusions because their judgment is perverted by their emotions. The spies were infected with fear. They were unable to think calmly and responsibly, all factors pointing to the possibility of success were repressed. When fear or anxiety governs our decision-making, majorities will vote with their emotions rather than their minds. And this is when a lone voice of courage needs to stand up without concern for popularity. When seeking truth, one must not be swayed by numbers and by majorities. History has proven time and again that multitudes are often wrong, that lonely, dissenting individuals frequently are of great spiritual and cultural heroes of humanity. And Caleb and Joshua stand as an example by saying what is true, by speaking the truth based on values, reason, discernment, and understanding, looking at the facts and not embellishing them or distorting them, even when it is not popular, even if it puts us at risk. Sometimes we just have to be ready to stand alone. This is the history of the people of Israel. This is the history of the Jewish people. The word Hebrew, ivri, means a person who is willing to stand apart on the other side. And that is who we have always been. Abraham stands firm by questioning God's morality. The prophets of ancient Israel stood strongly against idolatry, even at the risk of their own lives. Rabbi Akiva was eventually imprisoned for publicly teaching Torah, a practice that the Romans prohibited, and as he was being tortured, he recites the words of the Shema. Soviet refuseniks such as Anatoly Sharansky lost everything, went to prison, affirming his Judaism and his right to live in dignity in the land of Israel. Principled Jews stood up against racism in the 20th century America, even when the majority of the community said, tone it down, don't make waves. That is who we are as a people. That is what I believe it means in a broad sense to be a Jew. It is quintessentially Jewish to stand up and to be counted and to continue to hope in the face of despair, to knowingly take the risk out of principle, to tell the truth even when it's not popular, to have a vision of something larger and more important than ourselves. And we stand for that forth even if we are outnumbered by people who are just plain wrong. People can so easily be swayed by the media, by propaganda, or by demagogues, or silenced by their own fears. And it's not easy to stand before people and to know that you must say something that will not be well received. I felt that sometimes I've stood in a room and said something that I know I wouldn't be happy. I wouldn't be happy not saying. And I know I wasn't making people happy in the room. But sometimes you just have to take a risk. That is the message this week. We need to find the inner Caleb and Joshua. When right is on our side, it doesn't matter how many stand against us. That is what Judaism has always proclaimed. Let us embrace that sacred teaching. When it is most needed, let us find our backbone and stand up for what is right, because that is what is called upon us to be a Jew. Shabbat Shalom. Let us continue in our service.